So you can see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so upfront notes first. We will be recording this session. In fact, we are recording this session. The reason being that we're covering a lot of slides, and to make life easier for everybody, if you get a recording afterwards and a copy of the presentation, which you will, then if there's anything you want to go over again in your own time, a bit more slowly, you're welcome to do that.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So those will be coming, and I send you a list of notes and convenient links and things afterwards as well. So that if you forget to write notes down, or rather the idea is you don't have to write notes down. It's all going to come to you word for word. And by all means shout if for some reason it's not doing what you think it's supposed to be doing. Okay, so we're going to talk about today why you would need these licenses with your software, which is not an issue. You may already have them, but not to worry if you don't. We're going to talk about how it works, what it can do for you, so you get an idea of the sorts of things that you can be tackling. And we'll explain why what maps and layers means and how you use them. And then the most fun is if you have access to an account of Parish Online yourself, we can spend the last half of the session actually playing with it and doing the basics for you, the very early stuff, so that you could get off to a good start, I hope.
Wonderful. Okay,
so under the government's public sector geospatial agreement, which is a mouthful, everybody in local councils is entitled to use the most high definition maps that the Ordnance Survey puts out. And that will change you from what you're looking at in this right-hand side to that, which is a much more detailed view. And by the same token, that's linked to the aerial photography of the country, which will change you from looking at that to looking at that. Again, just more detail, higher definition. If you don't already have a PSGA number for your system, then it tells you how to get one up in your help and support system. And if you've not seen that yet in Parish Online, up here in the top right-hand corner, there's a cogwheel. And if I click on it, it comes up with a mini menu. And we click on help and support, and that takes you to the support center. And if you just type PSGA into the search box, it comes up immediately with how you get your PSGA number.
Lovely.
And that downloads into your system almost automatically if you haven't already got it. It doesn't take very long at all to arrive, and it's completely free. And it makes a big difference when you've got it. So that's how you get the best system you can get. Then we're going to show you how it does it and what it can do for you. And this is a sort of cloud-based system that you can get into just by using your browser. So you don't need to download everything. Everything happens up in the cloud. There's no software to install. And it gives you complete access to a digital mapping system for your council. And we'll go into why you might want that. So the help you get is simple. Lots of tutorials and videos in the knowledge base, and we'll cover how you get that. And then you also get email support and help from people like me or the user group. All these things are available to you and are explained in the email I send out afterwards. So why should you want to use maps in the first place? Well, in what's known, what I call location-based data, everything, particularly that the councils are working with, has a place, and it's a piece of cake for you just to click on anything in its place and have all the data for that item pop up on the left-hand side. And so that's how the system works. It just creates an easy record for you to keep track of everything that the council is responsible for. And the sorts of things that most people are using it for are these. I'm sure you'll recognize these as standard stuff that almost every local council is working with. Lots of people get Parish Online in the first place because they've decided to do a neighborhood plan, which is interesting because it's about the most complicated thing you can start with. So you might starting with everything else first.
We've got our neighbourhood plan all sorted. So we had a referendum on that.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that's a big sigh of relief. So everything else is easy after that.
Definitely.
But I'm sure you recognize this. Contracts management is a popular one, telling the contractor which grass he's to cut and which he's to leave alone is a piece of cake if you can just give him a map showing it clearly. And so it goes. It's also what I call getting your records out of your paper-based filing cabinet into a digital record that is open 24/7. It's very reliable, and it enables lots of people to use it at the same time, which is somewhat tricky with the filing cabinet. It's also more visual, and if you walked off on your holiday to Madagascar with the key to the filing cabinet in your pocket, it doesn't matter, because we can still look at the digital record whether you're there or not. So those are the advantages of going digitally. You can create your own maps. So you'll see in a second that there's lots and lots of information that gets given to you anyway by third parties, but you can also add to it with all your own stuff as well. So you can have a free hand. If you're a dab hand with a computer, this is actually lots of fun. It also lets you send the information to other people. So you can print it to a PDF or a graphics file, and you can then email that to anybody you want, or you can just save it on your computer for future reference, all sorts of reasons. And this is just one way out. There's lots of others. And these are the people who contribute the information to the layers of data that we'll be looking at in a second. So a lot of them are private organizations like the National Allotment Society. A lot of them are government things like DEFRA or the Public Health England. The whole lot of the maps comes from the Ordnance Survey. And because you've got this PSGA license, it's the very highest definition map that you can get. It's absolutely superb. And then we're adding more sources of data all the time. So this is always a slide that's already out of date, but who cares? So we're going to look at how other people in the country are using it, just in case that gives you ideas or inspiration. So neighborhood planning, you've already touched on, so you know about that.
Yeah.
This is an example of building up layers and using the system to control things. So here's just a map of one little town area. Then we might say, let's make a conservation area where no one can build anything or develop anything, and we'll make that there. So that's the gap between you and the motorway or whatever. Then we'll say, well, here are the areas that we are happy to develop. So, or maybe these are local green spaces given the LGS. So that's also clear. Then you say, these are the areas we want to develop. We'll put them in brown, industrial parks and so forth. And finally, it's very important to look after people's views, make sure we don't build high-rise buildings in the way of people wanting to see. So you can put their views on here and make it simple to understand where you shouldn't build. So just showing how a map can make things a whole lot clearer very quickly. In Chelsea, they've got obviously a lot of seafront with lots of benches, walls, pavements, sidewalks, everything to look after. So it's so much simpler if it's all in a computer and you can just click on any item and it'll tell you when it was last inspected, when it's due to be painted, that sort of thing. To every record in Parish Online, you can add almost any document you like. So spreadsheets, Word reports, photographs, maintenance reports of who's done what, inspection reports of what they looked at and what they found. All those things can be added to every record. So it's a piece of cake to find the track record of anything you've been working on. So it's really a good way of showing that the local council is working diligently and doing what they're supposed to do. This particular slide was to show how so many signs are getting in people's way and how ugly a speed camera can be when it's put in a sort of a rural area. So they were obviously discussion points in this particular village. And finally, well, not finally, but it's sort of not the right time of year now, but sort of during the winter, people need to know where the gritting routes are, where the salt bins are, how full they are, that sort of thing. All useful stuff to have on a map. And in particular, to call up your local district council or county council highway department and say, we need our bins refilling, particularly this one here. And you can send them the exact reference of where you're talking about. because we all use the same sort of information system. Cemeteries were a big thing for COVID. Suddenly the government was very worried about whether it's going to have space to put all the bodies it thought might be dying from the pandemic. And they were able to take one look at this place, and we could able to reassure them that yes, there were lots of spare, as yet unused graves. And finally, planning applications are one of the biggest things that councils have to work with. And you can say you can take a particular application from somebody here in the red square and say, well, it looks perfectly innocent there, but then if we throw in sites of special scientific interest and flood risks and woodland and tree preservation orders and so forth, do any of them get in the way of what otherwise looks like a straightforward application? So it's just a way of getting a better feel for the information around, and you're able to make better judgments accordingly. And we mentioned planning applications. Public maps is, I think, the best facility within Parish Online. What that basically says is you can produce an application that goes directly into your village website, and everyone can see what's being worked on as a particular planning application. They can watch the progress, they can read the comments, they can do everything all on the village website. It's a way of getting information, again, out of your miserable little filing cabinet into the wide, wide world. And here, a local village near to us, is using Parish Online to enhance their tourist leaflets with actual maps of what's going on and show you where things are. So each of these numbers here refers to an item on the map, so you can work out what you're going to go and see and when you're going to see it. And finally, case studies, which is really what we've been talking about, but the purpose of this slide is to show you that there's a tab on the Parish Online website called case studies. And the beauty of these is that there's lots of them, there's something like 50 of them, and each one records how this particular council used Parish Online to get something done in their village. So if you want to do something, the chances are someone may well have already done it. And what I like about these case studies is that they give you a step-by-step guide to how they got there. So if you say, what you want to do is to run a parish meeting on Parish Online, then here's somebody who's done that and does it on a regular basis. If you're sort of just getting in your allotments into style, then again, here's another little village that's done it, and they give you a record of how they got there. So a big help. Okay, so that's sort of what it can do. And what we're going to understand now is how it gets there. So Parish Online is what's called a GIS, a Geographic Information System. And the beauty of this is it's exactly the same format of data that all the big guys use. So your county council, your district council, central government all use geographical information systems, and they are compatible with Parish Online. So it becomes very easy to exchange data in both directions. They can tell you where all the footpaths are, and then you can tell them where all the errors are and send it back again. So it's a great system. Back in the old days, when people were trying to demonstrate things, they used this overhead projector, which was just a very bright light. You stuck a piece of plastic on it with the writing that you wanted to display or the diagram, and it showed on this screen. And then when you wanted to make amendments, you took out your felt tip pen and you scribbled on the plastic, or you got another piece of plastic and laid it over the top as a layer to enhance what was there first of all, or to change people's view of what they were seeing. So this system now is going to work exactly the same way by adding layers to maps to make the evidence more clear, to enable people to see what it is that the author is driving at. So information comes from lots of sources, which we've talked about here. You've got the land registry with their plots of land. You've got DEFRA with all their agricultural information. You've got Historic England with grade 2 listed buildings and so forth. You've got overhead photography, and you've got the Ordnance Survey, and you can stick it all together. You can show as many layers as you like simultaneously. The only limitation really is how much you clutter up things so that people don't understand what's going on. But certainly we're quite used to seeing several layers all turned on at once. which I've just said. So we talked about database information. So here, each dot represents a data record. And to find out what the dot is talking about, you just click on it and the record will pop up in the left-hand side. And we will be doing that later this evening. And then we did talk about how if the information you want is not in a third-party record, and by the way, there are several hundred of those layers, then you can just create your own. And that we'll be doing today as well, because A, it's fun, and B, it's easy. All right, so the layers come in 3 types. You can have points information, which is things like bus stops, trees, grit bins, that sort of thing. Or you can have lines, which are things like boundaries around fields or footpaths, or you can have polygons, which basically are everything else. So this evening, we'll probably do a polygon layer just to show you how it works, but the principle is exactly the same for all layers. And only one type of geometry can be used in each layer. So if you're trying to display something that is both a bus shelter and the footpath running past it, then you need to put 2 layers on. No problem. That's just the way the system works. And a couple of tips to people who are getting started: do use a mouse, even if you've got a laptop with a trackpad on it, or you're using something like a trackpad for Macintosh or graphic systems. It's much easier with a mouse in this particular instance. Make sure you're not using Internet Explorer as your browser, and take as much of your screen space as you can get. Okay, let's show you a bit more about it. This is what you see when you first turn on the system. On the right here, you've got the Ordnance Survey's high definition map of the UK, a digital map. On the left, this is a data column, and the use of the column changes as we're working through. But what it's showing you now are the collections of layers. So each one of these bars represents several layers underneath, which you see by clicking on the little down arrow, and we'll go through all this. And you've probably used digital maps if you're looking at Google Maps or something like that. So you're all familiar, I hope, with zooming in, zooming out, moving around, which is just a matter of moving the map with your mouse. So the starting point is always your home parish. And if you get lost and don't know where you are, you can click on the home button up here and it just brings you back to a known starting point. And at the moment we're looking at this, there aren't any layers turned on. So the next few slides, I'm just going to race through so you can see the sort of scaling available. And you zoom in or out either with the plus or minus buttons, or the fastest way is to roll your mouse wheel if you've got a mouse with a wheel on it. So this is the entire UK. All you can see at this stage is the capital cities. And no other layers are turned on, but this is the biggest scale, if you will, or the smallest scale, depending which way your maths works, but shows everything, but without any detail whatsoever. And then just like Google Maps, as you zoom in, you get more and more detail. So here's sort of a county-size picture. You can see all the main towns, you can see the main roads, but no real detail of the individual things down at the village level. So zoom in to village level and you start seeing individual houses. You start seeing the names of big fields and the names of small roads, as well as the numbers of the big roads. And then we can go down and say, well, actually, we can go down to the house level and look at this area here, just showing the several buildings on a farm. And you can zoom in to see just one building there. And then if you zoom in yet again, you can go down to the individual, almost the individual brick level of the corner of the house. So this is now measuring distances in centimeters. It's really very, very useful if you've got very tight decisions to make based on small spaces. Very rare to go down this far. It's just nice to know it's possible. Okay, going on to layers. At the moment, there's no layers turned on. And layers are decided by these collections here in different colors. So the green are the base maps, basically, that you're going to get the main picture here. And then the layers are all the layers that you can put on top of your base map. You toggle a layer on by just clicking in it, This is a collection, so you click the down arrow and then you'll see the layers underneath. You just click it once to turn it on and click it again to turn it off. So for an example, we're going up here, I'm going to click there, and here are the layers showing underneath, and the standard map is turned on, just the one tick mark. If we then go to the next stage, what I've done is you'll see I've clicked on the standard layer to turn it off, and I've ticked on the grayscale layer to turn it on. That's changed all the color system. Occasionally, it's much easier to see things when you've got all the colors turned off. And there is even a black and white one you can go to if you've got a sort of a laser printer that isn't capable of doing anything other than black or white. You might just as well print it all in black and white. It's much quicker. What we now have gone back to the standard layer, ticked it, but I've gone down to the aerial photography and turned that on. So now you're seeing two layers at once, and neither of them is working properly. So you can see some of the map detail coming through, and you can see some of the photography coming through, but both of them are rather vague. And the reason for that is up here, I'm going to right click on there, and up comes this little slider. And what this is going to determine is how transparent is the base map going to let the layer on the top shine through. So if I turn this down to the left, it's got 0 map and 100% photograph. So it's just like a regular aerial photograph of the area. You saw it before, what happened if we went with 60%, you got half and half. And if you turn off the photographs, you should expect to get just map only, but every now and again, the screen goes completely white. And I've just put this slide in here to show you that occasionally this happens, and it's sort of almost perfectly normal. You get back to where you want to be just by clicking on your refresh button up here for the browser. So as I said, this is not normal, but it does happen. And when it does, it's not a big issue. Just start again. Mm-hmm. So I've gone back to the regular map. I'm here in my own village of Long Sutton in Somerset, and we're going to show some of these layers in use. Now, I mentioned that there are hundreds of them here, so it's difficult to know what you want. They've given you a search function. So up here is a little magnifying glass. We're going to click on the magnifying glass, and we're going to type in the word flood, and it's now reduced those hundreds of layers down to just 3 collections that will have anything to do with flood information. If we click on the down arrow here, we see the layers that the Environment Agency provides. And bear in mind that I'm here in what's known as the Somerset levels. So we're A, below sea level, and B, very liable to flood here. So this is perfectly normal, but just so you can see the impact of a little rainstorm, everything disappears underwater. And you'll see later a photograph of it. We really do disappear underwater. So turn off the search button just by clicking on the X. And quick summary of where we are. We've shown you selecting different maps, grayscales, green scales, standard scales, photographs, and the various layers coming in. Now we're going to talk about how you convey a much more visual impact to people. So what we've done here is created one of our own layers, because we were given 50 trees by the tree charter, and they said, could you please keep track of them? So this is a field, if you will, or a space where the 50 trees were planted. We created a layer to do this, and to find out what the layer looks like, you just click on it. And you'll see now the left-hand column changes to the data record represented by this layer. And you see that we're talking about this one because it's now got a blue line highlighting it. And in here, you can see the information that we decided we want to keep, which is who is doing this, where are they, and when did we plant the trees. And then we also added in the attachments. Remember, I noticed I said earlier, you can add anything to a record. So we've got five attachments here. I'm just clicking on the plus sign to show them. And then here are they all. And just to look at any one of them, you just click on the associated green arrow. So up pops the photograph, and this basically shows the trees when they were first here and first being planted. So each one's got its own little protective tube to stop the local wildlife eating it. It's got a stake to hold it upright, get it nice and straight. And I promised to show you the water. So it's obviously rained recently. You can see the roads are still wet and the land is flooded. And one of the beauties of this is you can say, arrange to take a photograph like this, say every year or every 5 years, and then you have a track record of the growth. And you can see which ones make it, which ones die, which ones get transplanted elsewhere, and you can keep track of them. And if you use your imagination a little bit, instead of tracking trees, let's suppose we're looking at maintenance of park benches or the big trees that you've got to worry about whether they're going to fall on the road or a branch falls off and hurts somebody. So you can take a picture before and after each maintenance section, system or occasion, before and after each inspection record. And therefore you've got a track record of showing that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is very useful should suddenly somebody try and take out an insurance claim against you. Because they say grandma fell off the bench, and you can say, well, that was her fault, not ours, because we can demonstrate that the bench was recently repainted, it was recently checked, and all the wood is in great condition. And here's a photograph to prove it. So now we're going to give you the chance to play in a second, but we'll just go through quickly what we're going to do. So in the system, the only layers that you can change yourself are the parish layers, the ones that you build. The third party layers, all these other ones that you've been looking on, are coming from other people. So it's their data. You're not able to change it or touch, which is how it should be. There is a sort of an in-between case in the asset register. The structure of the data that's recorded there is provided for you, so you can't change that. What you can do is put in data, delete records, add records. So it's sort of a hybrid between the parish layers where you can do everything, the third party layers where you can do nothing except read them, and the asset register, which will come somewhere in between the two, and we'll touch on that later.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so when you're planning a new layer, you're going to say to yourself, well, what is it we want to record here? So the layers are the infrastructure of what you're going to record. And then to each layer, you add features or a data record, which is the actual data of the layer. So layers are the bones of the body, if you will, and features are the individual descriptions and date when that bone was grown and that sort of thing. So we're going to go into you doing the work now. If you are able to have a copy of Parish Online up and running, can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you able to, Helen?
Yep, I can, yeah.
All right, welcome, Helen. Didn't see you
Hello,
arrive.
sorry I was late.
No, that's right. It was explained that you probably had children and were worried about feeding them, putting them to bed, killing them, whatever.
I was just getting the eldest one to bed, but I think she's asleep.
So are you both going to run in Parish Online or just Helen?
We can both do it. I don't mind.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I just wanted to check that you're familiar with moving around when you've got two things happening. So Zoom is either running in your browser or in the app, if you use the app, which I hope you are, because it's simpler that way. And Parish Online will be running in your browser, and you're going to be going backwards and forwards between the two. I just wanted to check that you're happy with doing that. Are you both on Windows machines?
Yeah, mine's actually, my Zoom's open in my browser. So.
Okay, so to jump between browser tabs, the simplest way is just to say, if you have only 2 or 3 tabs open, then you can jump between them just by doing Control-1, Control-2, Control-3, and you just jump from one tab to another. If you're going between an app for Zoom and the browser for Parish Online, then that's just Alt-Tab, and you can, again, jump between the two simply by using the keyboard. Or you can use the mouse, whichever you like, but it's whichever's convenient to you. I just wanted to make sure you're familiar with doing those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me, shout if you're having an issue, because when I'm in this mode, I can't see what you're up to. So just to shout, and we're going to get you do the work now. But the next slide will just describe what we're going to be doing, all right?
Yep.
So what we're going to do is create a layer to begin with, and we're going to give it a title. And because you want to be able to come back to this later and perhaps delete it because you've done that, I suggest you call it something test. And your own name is a good idea as a starting point. So you might have Helen Test as the layer name for you. We have to choose which sort of geometry we're going to use, and I'm suggesting a polygon because I'm suggesting that what we're going to do for this exercise is create a new cricket pavilion, which is a building and therefore needs a polygon. You can, if you like, create a new bus shelter or a new footpath, which is either a point or a line accordingly. It's entirely up to you. Descriptions, you can choose your own. We'll get into why you want a description. And then you always need at least one column of data. For tonight's exercise, we're going to do 3. We're going to name, which is the new pavilion, date, which is obvious, and status. We're going to say you have 3 choices. It can either be not yet started, under construction, or finished. And the purpose of this is just to show you how you can get those little drop-down lists that make it so much easier to put in data if you already know what you're allowed to put in. So we'll be doing those things, or at least you will. I'll just sit back and do nothing. But on my screen, it'll be showing you exactly what you have to do on your screen, which is why I was suggesting you want to be able to jump back and forth between the two. So on my screen, I've now got the main menu, if you will. Along the top, you should have one that says create. And if you click on create, you want to go into the one that says new layer. And this is where I get people to shout because sometimes they can't see a create menu, which means they don't have the correct rights. And sometimes they don't have a new layer option. But since nobody's shouting, I assume you are both okay. Click on create a new layer and move to the next picture, which is a box that says create a new layer, enter a new layer title. And this title is going to be what's going to appear in that list of brown layers on the left-hand side. So you don't want to make it too long. Just call it something like I call the mine Graham test. And you can then just click on the next button. And this is where you select the geometry. So go into the layer saying select the geometry type you want and select whatever type you want. I'm going for polygon. Then you get the chance to set your layer's description. And the main purpose of this is to remind you when you come back here in 2 years' time, or you hand over to your successor, what on earth you created this layer for in the first place, because it's not always obvious from the names. People do tend to create quite a lot of layers, and we've got a couple of hundred, and I know people who've got more than that. So to remember what on earth they all do is easier to leave it to the description to tell you. So that's what this description is. Here you can just put anything you like in the way of gobbledygook, or just say this is my test for tonight. When you're ready, click on next, and you get the create a new layer, add columns screen. And a column is what we use to describe the information that we're going to create. And you do each one by adding on the plus sign at the top right. So click on the plus sign and it will automatically create a column for you called name. It's a text type. And nearly everybody needs a name. So you might just as well leave that one. Certainly we want the name in as the first one. You want a second one, which is going to be date. So click on the plus sign again. It comes up with the second row, which is exactly the same as the first row. And there's a chance where you change it. So you click on name, overwrite it or delete it and just replace it with the word date. And you click on the type in the middle and change it from text to date. Piece of cake. When you're ready, click on the plus sign again to get the third row we're going to have today. Again, it'll be called name, change the name to status. Leave the type as text, but in this case, we're going to do allowed values. So click on the add plus in the status line, and we can do that now. And it'll come up and say add allowed values. So where it says equals add a value, just type in not yet started. Then when you're ready, click on the add button and do a second one called under construction. And when you've done that, click on the add button again and do a third one and call it finished. And you'll see what the impact of all this is when we get down the road a piece. When you're happy you've done those, you can just click on confirm and move on to the next screen, which says, this is what we've done. Is that what you want? And you can confirm again. And you go back to the screen that says you've now got 3 columns called name, date, and status. And that all looks good. So if you're happy, click on the green button. This is the point where I tell you that it's very, very simple to edit things in Parish Online. So if you get it wrong to start with, it's not a problem at all. Just go ahead and change it later. It's a piece of cake, and the system was almost designed to do that. So click on finish, and the system will take you back to your main map screen, and it will appear as if nothing's happened. But the way this works is your new layer has got added to your list of parish layers. So you may need to open up the parish layers and scroll down if you've had some there before, because they always add the new ones to the bottom. So your new test layer will be the bottom one in the parish layers. And all I want you to do at this stage is check that it's there to know that what you've been doing so far has worked. Now, when you get the chance to enter new features, which you're going to be doing very shortly, it does help to have one of them as a required feature. In other words, you insist that someone's got to type something into one of the fields to keep the data. And that the reason you do that, because it's so much easier to find it later. If you've got a record added to the system which has got no data in it, how do you find it? But you're going to make one of the columns a required column, and the way to do that is to mosey on up to the cogwheel in the top right hand side of your Parish Online screen, click on the cogwheel, and then select the administration choice. And it may look as if nothing's happening because the center of your screen may be empty, but the system is busy downloading any existing layers that you've got, and the layers will arrive in the middle column, and yours will be down at the bottom. So if it's not immediately visible, scroll all the way down to the bottom and then just click on it if you would to select it. So clicking on it once will just highlight it. And then if you may need to scroll up again, but you may not, you just want to go, sorry, I'm just in the wrong place. Scroll up to the top of the screen again, and you see layer details. And if there are two tabs, one called general, one called column, click on column, and you'll see it comes up with the names of the three columns that we've created, name, date, and status. The system has automatically made each one search and query filled in. What you want to do is to make your name required. So all you need to do is click in the required box in that first row, which is called name. And when you've done that, it'll show up as I've got it on my screen. And at the top right, you'll have a nice bright yellow save button, which you can just click on, please. And you should get a sign saying, are you sure you want to save? And you say, yes, I'm sure. So you click on save, and the system will come up and say, the layer's been saved, which pops up as a little green label. It's only there for about 5 seconds, so you need to be quick. And if it hasn't saved properly, it'll be a little red label, and it will say you're not saved. The reason for that is usually very straightforward. It was just a temporary glitch in your connection to the internet, because you are saving everything up to the cloud at this point. It's very rare for this to happen, but if it does, you just save again, and usually that does it. So now we're going to go back to the maps. So we're ready for the next step. Back to the maps is the middle icon on the top right. Looks like a globe. So just click on the globe, and you will go back to your maps. On my screen, I've just got a summary of where you are so far to remind you what you've done. Basically, you've created a new layer, which you've called test for future reference. We've created the 3 necessary columns for that layer. We made the status column to have drop-down boxes with allowed values. And you made the name column a required data field so that you'll see why that's useful later. And then we saved on the new layer and came back to maps by clicking on the globe. So the next thing we're going to do is add a data record to that new layer. And adding records is known as adding a feature. So on your system, if you now go down and find your layer, the one that's called test, and right click anywhere in the layer, that brings up a mini menu, and you want to select the second item, which is called add feature. Just click on that. And in the left-hand column, you'll now change to a feature editor. And nothing will have changed on the right-hand side, but you're going to add, if you're following my example, a new pavilion. So it helps to sort of get your map to a place where you can usually plausibly put a new pavilion. So I'm going to scroll on my map and zoom in a bit until I find the recreation ground, which is where I'm going to add the new pavilion. You can find any old space that you like on your map, but this is the chance where you want to scroll around till you find one and then zoom in to make it nice and large to be easy to work with. So I'm going to do that on my screen just to show you. And I've chosen the recreation ground and I've zoomed in a bit to make it good and big. So now you'll look at the left-hand data column and you'll find that there's a blank record there, and the red field is outlined in red saying it's required. And what that means is that the save button down at the bottom is currently grayed out, and it will stay grayed out until you've entered something in that name field. So now's the time to go in and put test pavilion or whatever you want to call it. By all means, add a date, and by all means, click on status so that you can see what happened to those 3 values you created earlier. Did I hear a mutter, or was that just a cough?
No,
Everyone?
nothing from me.
You're all right?
Yeah, all okay.
Good. So go ahead and fill in those fields, please. And you should end up with something like I have on my screen, which is all 3 fields filled in. And the save button is still grayed out. And the reason for that is you haven't yet added the pavilion to the field. So now we're going to do that. As you move your mouse over the map, you'll see it changes to a crosshairs, probably with a blue button in the middle of it. And you just want to go and find any starting corner for your pavilion. Just click once and then move the mouse, and you'll find that the mouse has a blue line trailing behind it. So you can draw a straight line representing one edge of the pavilion. Then when you want to turn a corner, create a right angle or whatever, click once again, and then you can move off in the new direction. So every time you want to change direction, you just click once and you go around and create the pavilion, which may be a square, it may be a triangle, it may be any shape you like. But when you finish, double click. And when you've double clicked, that tells the system you've finished, and you should now be able to save. The black button at the bottom has become black instead of grayed out. So do please go ahead and click on save. And your building, which has been in nice blue outline, should change to a nice bright red to indicate that you have actually saved it and it's recorded. The system in the left-hand side automatically assumes you're going to add another record, so it's created a new blank record for you. Today, we're not going to add another one, so just click on the X up by the word feature editor and turn off that feature editor column. And then you'll be ending up with just your original list of columns in the left-hand side and your nice bright new red pavilion, hopefully on the map. So what we want to do now is to show you how to edit that, or to delete it, or to make any changes to it that you like. And the way to do that is to bring up the data record for it, which you do by clicking anywhere in the red space of the new pavilion. So just click in the pavilion, and the left-hand side will change either to the original data record, or it may say something like your test layer, and you just click on the word test layer and it comes down to the pavilion record. Then, because the system is now working on the pavilion record, you'll see your red building has now become encircled in blue, which will have a nice blue highlight around it. And that's just to show you that it's that particular record that you're changing. Because some layers you'll have multiple features, and the only way to know which one you've selected is because it's the one with the blue line around it. So in the left-hand column, the top left icon is a pencil, which is your edit pencil. If you click on that, you can now change any of the 3 entries. So if you don't like the word new pavilion, or you want to call it Fred's pavilion or whatever, this is the chance you get to change it. You can change any of the fields. And you also have the chance here, if you wanted to delete the record. This is where you delete by clicking on the dustbin. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is just show you quickly how you change the shape of your pavilion. If it isn't right where it should be, or if the right angles aren't to your satisfaction, it's much easier to change when you're in edit mode now than when you were building it in the first place. So I like to suggest that when you're creating something, do it quick and dirty, and then come back into it and edit it later. And it's much, much easier to edit. First of all, you can scroll in, zoom in to make the building much larger if you want. then click on any corner or any line that you want to straighten out or change the position of, and you'll see there's a blue dot. You can just pull that to the shape, any shape you like. So you can turn your triangular building into a square, or you'll notice that I've got a weird shape that isn't aligned with the edge of the field, which is where I wanted it to be. So I'm going to assume that I'm going to straighten it in line with the edge of the boundary. So I'm going to zoom in a bit, and you'll see I've now got a much bigger line and a space, and it's clear to see where I need to move my lines just to line them up with the edge of the field. Everyone happy? When you're happy and if you've got it the shape you wanted, or you just got used to the idea of changing things, then click on save, and that will save the changes that you've made. And the system will jump back to your red building, and it should be all set to go. Now, this is the chance, if you wanted to, where you can add an attachment. So until you got to this edit point, there was no way of adding attachment. You have to create the record first, the feature, and then go into edit mode to add an attachment. So now's the chance. We're going to add one just so you get the hang of it. So click on the word add attachment, and it'll ask you, what do you want to add? You can just select any file from your computer. It doesn't matter if it's a Word spreadsheet or a Word document or a spreadsheet or a picture or anything you just happen to have there. It doesn't matter. Just add it in, and the system will sort of spin around to itself for a bit and then come up with the answer that it's added the attachment. Now, the reason we're doing this now is because if you selected a photograph, that may take a couple of seconds to upload to the cloud, and it's just to get you used to the idea that things are not completely instantaneous. There may be a second or so delay. We've talked about how you can delete the record if you wanted to. This is also where you would edit the data in the data record. But you're now complete, and we can say we're done. So if you can come back now to my screen, I'm moving on to nearly the last slide, because I just promised I'd tell you about the asset register, because this is the one that's sort of neither a parish layer nor is it a third-party layer. It's a combination of the two. So the asset register comes to you already structured. You don't need to add a layer for it. You just go into it and add data records, and the fields that are there are the ones that experience has shown to be the things that most councils need to record against each of their assets. So, you need to say, we have a maintenance schedule or an inspection schedule of once every 6 months or once every 2 years or whatever it happens to be. And then you need to record the date of the last one when you did it and all those sorts of things. You can add as many records as you like to cover all of your assets, but you cannot change the structure. So you add the data, but you can't change the structure. If you find that there's something in your assets which you want to record, which is not allowed for in the asset register infrastructure, then just create a new layer in the parish layers, and you can display both together when the time comes, so that sometimes people want to record information that isn't allowed for in the asset register yet. I mean, the classic example I can give you is that more and more councils are beginning to say, not only do we want to record there is a street light here, but we need to record whether it's an old sodium light or a halogen light or even an LED light. And instead of just saying it's a light, we want to say it's on a light pole and the light is made of metal, or it's fiberglass, or it's whatever, cement. Some of this information is becoming to be useful for record purposes. And so people are adding that information into their parish layers to sort of complement what's in the asset register for streetlights. So there is an entire training session available on on the asset register. So I'm not going to cover it all here in the 30 seconds we've got available. It's just to mention that it's there and it's got a purpose, and it's different from the other layers because you can add records to it, you can delete records from it, but you cannot change the structure. All right. Lastly, again, this is the topic of another training session if you need to find out more, but the headings across the top of Parish Online all have drop-down features that sort of lead to next steps. So if you don't find them self-obvious or self-evident, there's a link on this slide when you get the presentation that will take you to the user group page, which does explain every menu in detail. I also give you or remind you of that knowledge base, which is in the cogwheel in Parish Online, the top right. If you click on it, then you get a drop-down menu, and the second item is help and support. That takes you to the brand new knowledge base that Parish Online has created, which is actually pretty good. And you can just enter the name of what you're looking for. Like if you type in layers, it'll sort of come back and say, well, this is how you create a layer. This is how you edit a layer. This is how you delete a layer. It's all done for you. So just click in the search box, type in what you want, and the system will come up. There's some great videos in there which show you how to do things. And there are fairly, what I would call blunt, step-by-step instructions on how to do things. I think that for people who are very new to Parish Online, they don't give you enough steps, which is why the user group has taken on the burden of doing that. And then we're trying to get them to update their knowledge base to contain everything that we have in the user group, because the user group is set up to help brand new people, and we know where they have difficulties that sometimes the Parish Online people haven't allowed for. But by and large, the knowledge base is a great aid. I think it's been extremely well done. The videos in particular are very well done. And it's also where you can open up a ticket to say something doesn't appear to be working. What's the issue? Excuse me. And Parish Online are very good about getting back to you when you open a ticket. So don't hesitate to do that. Excuse me. I'm just going to expire quietly now that we finished. So that was the end of the session. This is where I say this is the Q&A session. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can come back and see you people. Evening Candy. Evening Candy. They're both called Candy. Right, Candy and Helen. I hope that was useful.
Yeah, it was
Well,
really good.
If you have questions, now is the time to ask.
No, I think I'm okay. I won't know until I have a proper play with it.
Okay, so Helen, I'm not sure if you were here when we were saying that you're going to get a copy of the video and the presentation and a whole bunch of thoughts about how you can get going from here. I usually ask people at this stage that if they can think of any topic on which we haven't got a training session, then by all means, let me know. In the email that I'll send you, I'll show you where to go to pick up on future training sessions, should you want them. It's entirely up to you. And as I say, this is, again, your opportunity to ask questions, or you can say, Graham, go to bed. It's time we all went and have a drink.
Yeah, I think it's time for a drink, Graham.
Time for a drink. Yes, well, certainly from my coughing, it's clearly a lager and lime is indicated. You can have your own poison. And it's very nice to meet you both. And I hope to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's really good.
Do feel free to come back to me if you have any issues. The same place as the knowledge base, there's a tab in there called Community Forum. And that's where you can go online to ask questions. I'll be pointing this out in the email. And there's also every Friday, there's what's called a banter session. The user group gets it's what I call the usual suspects come together. And they're just parish councillors and clerks who are volunteering their time to answer any questions that you may have. So you can just log in between 3 and 4 on a Friday afternoon. You can ask your question, they'll answer it, and then you can buzz off again, or you can stay because you're just so fascinated by the banter that's going on.
That's good.
All right.
You might see us there. You never know.
Good. Well, take care. Nice to see you. Hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Bye.